Okay.
Good luck. Of course. Multiple people came up to me. You're like, I was like, I'm not at my control. Yeah, my boss, and then she's the one running all this, and I'm like, I'm sure they will. Yeah. I'm a great writer, but I just probably don't have the wrong room for orange. I would be here to speak. Yeah, exactly. I just fully wrote it down wrong. So. Exactly. Yeah. I'm reading you. So I'm I know. I know that's like help with name a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, I was also laid off a couple times for the past year. It was awesome.
This work? Right. Welcome everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining our session here on opening new ground, access, ownership, and creative growing spaces. I'm going to go ahead and hop into this slide just so you know what you're getting into. I'm Leigh Hammerbacher with Triangle Land Conservancy, and we are presenting today along with the City of Raleigh and talking about how to open up new spaces for farming and land access. We're going to cover 3 different case studies, kind of starting very small at the community garden space, and then moving into a larger farm space, our Williamson farm that Heather Szaro manages here, and then ending up with Kierra, Hyman, and our Good Ground program, which is a land access program for larger farms. So a little bit of background before we hop into the case studies. If you're not familiar with the Triangle or TLC, Triangle Land Conservancy, we are a nonprofit land trust that works to protect land across the 6-county region, including Wake County, where you're located right now. Our mission is to create a healthier and more vibrant Triangle region, safeguarding clean water, protecting natural habitats, supporting local farms and food, and connecting people with nature. We've helped protect about 26,000 acres of land in the Triangle region, and we own and operate about 8,000 acres. So again, these are the 4 public benefits I just mentioned: safeguarding clean water, supporting local farms and food, protecting natural habitats, and connecting people with nature. We protect land through 3 main tools. The first is be simple. So folks either donate land to us or we buy land. So again, across the 6-county region I just showed you, we have about 8,000 acres of land that we are responsible for managing every day. We also hold what is known as a conservation easement. This is a tool to protect land where basically the owner and manager and operator continues to do so. TLC just holds the development rights. So this is the main tool we use to prevent subdivision of farms and development of farms. And then in addition to that, we also assist local governments, agencies, and land seekers in buying land. And sometimes we will purchase land and transfer that to other entities. So as I mentioned today, we're going to talk about 3 different case studies, kind of ranging in scale. And since y'all are from 28 different states, just a little bit more detail on our area. We're located right in the heart here, about where that E is. So Raleigh is the main municipality in Wake County, but I believe there are 12 municipalities in Wake County alone. So our area is about 1.5 million people. In the metro area, in the area of Raleigh itself, I think it's 500,000 people. And Amy's going to talk a little bit about their community garden initiatives. She works for the Raleigh Parks Department, and I'll let her introduce herself in a little bit. But just scale-wise, to give you an idea, I believe the Raleigh Parks Department is the largest department of City of Raleigh in employees, and their budget alone is close to $80 million. So TLC, on the other hand, we are a nonprofit land trust. We have 34 employees. We are a larger land trust. I think we're the largest in the state of North Carolina. And as I mentioned, we own about 8,000 acres of land and have another close to 12,000 acres of land under easement. So with that, I am going to pass it off to Amy, and each presenter is going to give a little bit of background information in about 10 minutes on their farm and project, and then we have some questions, and then in the end we'll open it up to other questions.
Good morning. Thanks everyone for coming. It's good to see a lot of folks out here, and thank you to the fellow panelists for all the hard work getting us here in this space, and also thanks to Interfaith for having this conference to bring everybody together. So it's good to be here, and I appreciate it. So a little bit about, so I'm City of Raleigh. My job title is Community Gardens Coordinator. I am part-time, so I have I'll tell you a little bit about the background of how the program got started. We've got a couple folks in the room that have been around just as long and have kind of seen the ebb and flow of the program. So it's pretty small right now. You saw on the map we have 2 gardens, so 2 community garden spaces. We also support any of the centers that have raised beds, and that came as a part of an MOU with Interfaith. So they signed a non-binding contract to kind of consult, which the program started a year before I came on board. The beds were built, so Eastgate is a smaller, this is a picture of Barwell. This is phase 1 of Barwell. Barwell has 34 raised beds, 4x8 beds, and a few ADA beds. And I'll show y'all next. So this is another, just a aerial footage of the beds during the inception. So that's phase 1, and then phase 2 was both phases were built by Gardens for Everyone with Lynn and Phoebe. But Monica was there. She's on our webpage now. So part of a longer story, and I only have 10 minutes, so we'll go into all the details on that. But we can go on to the next one and show Eastgate. So this is Eastgate. It's a little bit smaller. It's 9 beds. All of these are volunteer managed. So originally, when I came on board a year ago, my job is essentially to coordinate and try to, our largest issue is volunteer recruitment and retention. So that's kind of where I've come in, trying to build relationship, do more with collaboration with what we have in the community as far as our partners and partnerships, to just generate more interest in the space, which is, I think a lot of folks that work in these areas, it's the same type of challenge. Otherwise, it's each group is very different. So obviously, Eastgate's only got 9 beds. It's very small. It is run currently by a 501c3. There's a few ladies there that take care of the beds and hold work days. It's very much different at Barwell. Is a little bit larger community. Thankfully, at that space, we have the senior group that works directly with the Barwell Road Community Center. So they're out there weekly. They manage phase 2 of the space, which is about 9 beds, and that directly benefits the senior community. And how that whole space came a part of the strategic plan from 2 years ago. So Raleigh has this big strategic plan. I don't have anywhere near that 80 million on our budget. Obviously, the parks is a huge, it's behemoth organization. So it's not just health and wellness is the underneath Parks and Rec. So there's lots of different divisions inside of this large umbrella. And like I said, our department is very small. It's just 3 of us. It's myself, Ainsley, and another full-time coordinator who does mostly nutrition work and exercise and that sort of thing for all the community centers. So this is a fairly new program, and I'm always open to conversations for how to, at least get a little bit more involved in the community and ways we can do a little bit more on volunteer recruitment and retention, as well as just learning more about Raleigh. I'm also new to the area, so I'm always welcome to learning more. Thank you.
We started with the blue stars, and now we're moving over. Yeah,
And now we're gonna move right here with me. So yeah, this is gonna be east, like you're heading towards the coast. For those not familiar with just east of Raleigh. That's what we're gonna talk about. That's what I'm gonna talk about. Great. So I'll give you just a little bit more background on one particular aspect of what TLC does. So as Leanne mentioned, we have 8,000 acres of owned and operated land. On probably 3,000 or 4,000 of those acres, we have 8 public preserves that are located all throughout the triangle. So in all, at least 4, if not 5, of our 6 covered counties. One of which is the Williamson Preserve. And those public preserves have hiking trails. Some of them have biking trails. Williamson has all of the above, plus farming, which is where I'm coming into play. And so Williamson itself, and the Williamson Preserve, was opened in 2018, I believe, but really it was started kind of in earnest in 2018, but opened in 2020, in the heart of the pandemic, yeah. Just in time for everybody to want to be outside. We have 16 miles of hiking and biking trails. This is the map of the entire Williamson Preserve. The green part is what TLC owns outright, so that's about 420 acres, I believe. And then this purple part is owned by and operated in part by, but mostly by us, by the city of Clayton, which is like the southern city south of Raleigh and Johnston County. This is also, conveniently enough, the Johnston County border around here somewhere. Yeah, pretty much right there. So this is Williamson. We have all sorts of things that happen, but what makes Williamson unique and special, and what brought me to TLC, is that we also have a beginning farmers program that was started by partnership with the former owner of the land, Betty Brandt, who kind of in earnest wanted to see her family's land remain in farming and not just grown out into early successional habitats, which is what TLC would have probably been want to do, because they are inherently not a farming organization. But she really wanted to see some farming happen on the property. So in partnership with TLC and NC Choices, which is an NC State offshoot with CEFS, which stands for Center for Environmental Farming Systems, which is also pseudo an NC State offshoot. NC State, for those who aren't familiar, being our local land-grant university. We kind of started this program. They helped guide it really heavily because TLC doesn't know how to start farm programs. That's not what we do. That's not necessarily what our 43 years has been in the past. And so what you're seeing here is farm fields that we have and some farms that I'll go through as well. But essentially the purpose of the program is to provide land to beginning farmers, ideally farmers, because we're operating on 120 acres of our land. Separate different parcels, but 120 acres total. To provide land to beginning farmers, ideally farmers that have a few years experience in farming, but don't have the equity, don't have the access, don't have the capability to get access to land. Again, a little background on Wake County. It is very expensive to live here and to own property here, as it is, I'm sure, where everybody is. But Wake County and Johnston County are in the top 40 counties in the nation for projected farmland loss by 2040. That's American Farmland Trust. So farmland is disappearing rapidly. It's pretty scary. North Carolina in general is number 2 in the states for it, under Texas. And so farmland's rapidly disappearing. The land that exists is extremely expensive, and so people that aren't inheriting land from their folks don't have a place to farm. And so that's where the Williamson program comes in, because we provide this land, and we also have an equipment share, so we have a shared use tractor for all participating farmers on the property at an extremely reduced rate. It is currently 43 acres per year, an acre per year. So do the math on how cheap that is. And the farmers also have an opportunity to work that off with volunteer work or like infrastructure help, or things that we've requested them to do that are benefiting the whole entire property. So it's a pretty great deal for farmers, and the purpose of it is to kind of mitigate a lot of those barriers to entry it takes to start a farm in Wake County, in Johnson County, in the Triangle, in the United States. It's land access. My background is in farming, and I always say if I didn't get this job, I'd be one of the farmers, because I was one of those people that has experience in farming, can manage a farm, but didn't have any money to start one. And it's very scary because the land that you do lease could lose it at any moment to development. The person you have a handshake agreement with could pass away, their family doesn't want to pay the taxes anymore, and there goes like 10 years of soil hard work, you know? So that's the gist of the program. It's very cool, it's very exciting. This is, generally speaking, all of the farm fields that we have. So this is kind of the top half. If you switched it and inverted it, this would be where you kind of see that old map with all our trails going down, but it's just this way instead. And these are all our farm fields, some of which are small, some of which are a lot bigger. And we have a few farmers. Currently we have 5 farmers on the property. We have a cattle farmer, which is cattle you see here. We have a native tree nursery, and I can talk more about that if I have time later, about this. So this is like a burn and spoil system we helped implement with them. And this is on 17 acres, that's on this field. And they have native trees, they do planting, they do like kind of pasture. It's a whole big project that they do over there. We have 2 small vegetable farms, and then over on this side, we also have a fellow who we kind of inherited, but is really great. He farms on 30 acres. He does no-till conventional farming, which is not generally something that I envisioned for the program, and he's not a new farmer by any means. He's a generational farmer, but based on the location and the type of farming that happens around where Williamston is, he's a really amazing asset to have because he does do no-till, but he does grow corn and soy. He's even trying to move away from chemical termination. So he grows his own cover crops, he plants cover crops, he does the no-till, and it's a really great kind of resource and kind of community champion to champion a lot of those practices that we're trying to preach, but he's actually doing them. So that's really helpful. I think I mentioned earlier, we have a shared use tractor. That is not it. The other one is to the side. That's just for TLC staff, and that's my mom's dog. But it has also been a really great resource. We have several implements that the farmers can use, and we just have like a cool checkout sheet for the farmers. And it generally, as it stands now, has not become an issue. No, there's like no overlap. Sometimes the farmers break things, but that's just part of the course. And on top of having all of our farmers, we also have a lot of programming based out of Williamston because we're trying to have the Williamston Farm Program and Williamston Preserve be kind of this pinnacle for agriculture on the eastern side of the triangle, and just have like a basis for it. So we have had all sorts of events. This was a community event with the North Carolina Food Justice Advocacy Coalition, I think is the whole, that's the whole acronym. We've had some soil workshops with NRCS and our local Wake County Soil and Water with local farmers to learn the importance of cover cropping and no-till. We've had events with like the Cover International groups come out and just tour. This is them checking out some Chickasaw plums. And then we just have events with our local farmers, and I'll talk about one of our local farmers in a bit. But this was an event that one of our local farmers put on for their community that they were just able to kind of utilize our space. We've also had Wake County Planning come out and just have backpack giveaways, and another big event, which I'll mention in a second as well. But yeah, so it's become like this whole kind of space, which I'm really happy about because a big part of what I want to be able to do is like build a bigger agriculture community out there. Or let me rephrase, rebuild it, because it existed and it has existed, but development's kind of like cut it into parcels. And so being able to have a safe space for everybody to come and hang out is really important. And so yeah, so there's a bit of farmers I mentioned. A few photos that you see here was kind of this inaugural festival that we put on this summer called the Land and Harvest Festival. A big part of the building that you kind of saw us meeting under earlier is our agriculture pavilion, and so it has a wash pack station for our farmers to use. It's an event space for everybody to use, and we're hoping in the future it's also going to be a spot for the occasional farmers market for our farmers. And so a way to kind of initiate that original farmers market, that kind of farmers market idea, was I figured I just kind of had to not necessarily trick the community in coming to support a farmers market, but give them, incentivize them to come to a farmers market. And so we put on a farmers market with our Williamson farmers, with some of our other farm partners, including the Ayers Farm out of Chatham County, I believe. And then UCAM, which is out of Durham, which we might talk about later, and some of our other local farms. And it was really successful. I mean, most of these farmers sold out of produce. We also had a live band, my buddies played some bluegrass music. We had a bunch of partner organizations that were able to kind of talk. We had guided hikes, a tour of our really cool old church. And it was just like a really special day that people got to see the focus of Williamson not be, you know, a big biking event, but be the farming, and the farmers got to be like really highlighted, and there was really amazing food. And so yeah, we had over 300 people come. I think we'll have a lot more next year. It was very exciting. And I think, and I'll just mention one of our farmers, who's probably like our most active farmer at the moment, is the Corinne Community Farm. We started working with them a few years ago. They were on a different property down the road that we have helped conserve. And they were just looking to expand. They were looking for more public-facing opportunities for their organization. And I was on their board for a few years, and so we brought them over to Williamson, and we put them in like this front and center location, and it has been like a really great situation. So they just moved over in June of this year. So if anyone works in farming, you know, it takes a really long time and a lot of effort to move a farm. So they're just now getting going. They've harvested a bunch of shares of produce recently, and so it's been really exciting to see that. But these guys have a farm stand that you can see here. They're a Corinne farmers, which is an ethnic group out of Burma. They're all refugees. They've been over here for quite some time now, but definitely still insular in their community and trying to like grow traditional Asian vegetables for their community, which has been really wonderful. You see here, down here, they have events with us all the time. Really big like community events. Not all of those are our farmers, but they are all like community, like in their like neighborhood kind of. Which has been really great. This is a different program we're not going to talk about today, but we have an apprentice program that's out of Williamson. These are high school students, and so we brought them over to the farm, and the kids were able to like try out these different vegetables that they'd never tried before. And this is Tusal, he's kind of the main guy over there at Corinne Community Farm, and he was just throwing them out, and everybody was like a little hesitant at first to try all these like funky Asian vegetables, but then they did, and everyone really liked it. And it was like really beautiful to see. And so yeah, they're starting up this year. They have a farm stand. They generally have CSAs, but since the farm transition, they've been a little on pause. But and I think that's it for what I have to say. I don't think I have more, right? Yeah, I think that's it. And yeah, we'll talk about it more later. But that, oh, I should mention that our funding source originally started with a partnership with Wake County. Wake County put us in the budget for a 3-year span from 2018 to 2021, and then 2021 to 2024. And now we're no longer in that, so we're just fully funded by TLC now, but it was partially funded, it was heavily funded by Wake County at first, so that was cool while it lasted.
Well, thanks, Heather. As you can tell, Williamson Farms is a ton of work. And I think taking on Williamson Farm and some of our other farm programs, we really realized that TLC wanted to play a role in local foods and farming, but we did not have the capacity to manage thousands of acres of farmland across our area. So how could we work to protect that space, but also make it available to new farmers, as well as increase equity in land ownership? So our last case study, I think we've gone from a couple of acres to 450 acres to now looking at thousands of acres across the triangle and how we can make that more accessible to land seekers.
I should have a slide that just starts with the bigger initiative. somewhere in there. Hi, I'm Kierra. I manage the Good Ground Initiative program with Triangle Land Conservancy. This program is focused on, there we go. No, I think it's right there. It's focused on using our conservation tools, resources, and connections to create land ownership opportunities. So for both of my friends up here, access has been the primary focus and will continue to be as such. And for my program, that is also the case. But one of the differences between a lot of the work that TLC has done historically and the work that my program is focused on is actually creating access opportunities in the form of ownership. So for all land easement projects, anyone who's interested in doing conservation, they themselves have to come firstly with land that they already own. I can't just kind of look over and be like, oh, I want that conserved, can you protect that? It's not my land, I don't own it. But for a person to be able to participate in the conservation easement or donation of land, it requires that they have ownership. And they can benefit from this ownership via selling a conservation easement, which is essentially like selling certain rights associated with that property. And there are the feel-good elements of that, like, oh, I protected this lovely oak tree, but there's also financial benefits associated with conservation that historically certain communities have been able to benefit from, whereas other communities, especially historically underserved ones, have not. And we have taken a long look at our organizational history over the past 43 years, largely thinking about who are the people in the communities that we've worked with, engaged, and met conservation, and have been able to benefit from that, who are the people that we're missing out on. And so as an organization, we've done a lot of history searching, looking back on who we've been engaging with in the past, and it starts with actually just kind of acknowledging like the people history of our properties that we even own ourselves. So like we have mentioned, there's several preserves, nature preserves that we own and manage around the Triangle. Some of them, well, all of them carry a history, but Williamson is one we've been able to do a lot more history identification on, as well as Horton Grove Nature Preserve. That one's in Durham County, and that is within an area that is a part of the historic Stagville Plantation region, which was one of, if not the largest plantation in the Southeast. And at its peak time, I think it had almost 1,000 enslaved people working on that land. And so with that kind of history in mind, like for us to just protect the land and say, okay, here's so many hiking trails, go out and enjoy, it's neglecting also the amount of people that contribute to the land, even looking the way that it looks today. And so this is just some of the things that inspired the program that I manage, as well as also acknowledging the difficulty of accessing land for people who are wanting to grow food, and as well as actually benefit from the ownership pieces of it. So there are many benefits actually to leasing land, but as people continue to invest resources and time and equity into the property, it becomes all the more important actually that element of ownership, so that there's not, you're able to just make those decisions and have more sovereignty over the property that you're managing. And so that's another element of what inspired the Good Ground Initiative as well, acknowledging both the people history of the property and who's been able to actually continue to own land, benefit from land ownership, grow food on their properties, as well as also acknowledging like we are in an area that's rapidly developing, and there's an urgency actually to protect these properties that while they're still open, while there's still that green space. So that's a lot of stuff is what inspired the initiative that I manage. And what we do, I can't remember if there's a slide, but yeah, actually you can see the next slide. So how we go about using our organizational resources to create land ownership opportunities for historically underserved farmers and foresters is by an element of community collaboration, and then an element of actually like our own resources using conservation easements. So I'll speak a little bit about the community collaboration after this slide, but for the conservation tools, so as I mentioned earlier, for doing a conservation project, it requires ownership, but this switches around the order essentially of how conservation projects are done, and that we as an organization receive land, so we buy or receive a donation of property, and we become the owners of that property. And the next step is to use conservation easements to actually bring down the value of the property so that we can sell it at the reduced value. Because with the easement, you have certain rights associated with your property. But when you sell a conservation easement, you're essentially giving those rights to the land trust, which is TLC. So when that happens, you kind of have like several numbers that are associated with the property now. The fair market, I'm not encumbered at all price, and then you have the after easement value. And so that middle value is what these rights are valued at. So it could be like, oh, the conservation values, there's a stream on the property, there's a number associated with that. This property is like prime soil for farmland, there's a number associated with that. And putting all these different elements together kind of provides what's called the conservation value. And so we essentially kind of subtract that number from the overall unencumbered value to get what's the after easement value. So I'm just gonna give you like, that's a lot of words. Let's just say the property is worth $500,000 fair market appraised value, and the easement value is worth $250,000, then the selling price would be $250,000. So they're essentially getting the property that hasn't changed. There's all these benefits associated with the property. What the person is paying for, that historic farmer or forester, is around like $250,000. And this is all based on appraisals of the values of the property. But in that way, it reduces some of that barrier, that financial burden associated with actually accessing properties in the triangle, and especially since we recognize the significant prices of properties around our area. Anything to kind of get that number down is beneficial. And then it creates more opportunities and open doors for people to actually access land to be able to purchase it and own it and benefit from that ownership as well. And so with another element of the community collaboration piece of it, I think you can go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So this element requires recognizing that, okay, it's great that we can like sell land to people at a reduced value. And in the beginning phases, when I first joined TLC team, I was like, oh, this is such an easy flow of we buy the land, we sell it, we conserve it, and we sell it, and we're done, everybody's happy, we're farming. No, there's a lot more to it that is involved with actually not just getting a person access to land that they can own, but actually setting them up so that they're not going to be land rich and then it's kind of actually struggling, they can't even do farming. And so that requires a lot more actually building a network of people that can support the people that we're meeting, those land seekers. In the before phases, before they even get introduced into ownership of conserved land, and then the process of actually working with us to develop the easement language, and then even afterwards, as they're now the stewards, the owners, managing that property and how they can go about actually successfully stewarding that. And so that is all that kind of lumped together is what formed our thought for what's called the PLACE program, or Partnerships for Land Access, Conservation, and Equity. And this program began last year in the winter time as a webinar series that was meant to be, well, it is a requirement for the historically underserved farmers who are interested in our program to learn about kind of like 3 different stages, so to speak, or elements associated with owning conserved land to keep those things in mind. The first being Conservation 101. So I'm actually very curious. Does anybody know what a conservation easement is before you came in this room? A little bit? Yeah, okay. Exactly, thank you. It proves my point that you don't really know what it is unless you're in this space. And before I even started working with TLC, my knowledge, I studied Spanish in college, so I didn't know anything about conservation easements. I know I speak Spanish then. But so I got into this work largely just out of an interest. My latter half of college years was it's great that I'm forgetting the name of it, COVID, there we go, COVID-19 pandemic. And so one of the things that we could do, like Heather was saying, around 2020 was to go outside. And that's kind of what sparked my interest in green spaces and getting connected with farmers, especially since I went to the store and saw that the aisles were empty of food. And so for people who, it's great that they actually have that experience or they want to grow food, but they don't know about all the fields or careers or anything associated with like land, including conservation. That's one of the things that we can get people introduced into knowing about conservation easements and the legalities associated with it. What are people's rights that they're able to continue to hold, and what are some things that are restricted? So having more clarity about what a conservation easement is, or what a conservation land trust does as a whole, beyond just our work with individual property owners, but also educational opportunities or outreach and things like that. So that's like one aspect of the work. The second piece was about financial health and diversifying one's land use. So I like engaging the crowd. Anybody here ready to buy some land tomorrow? You're financially ready to buy land? Not many exactly. And that requires requires a lot of financial foresight and planning ahead of time to know, like, what are my personal finances? Do I have the means to create, to be able to purchase land? Even if it's discounted, it's not gonna be free. $250,000 is less than $500,000, but it's still a lot of money. So what are the ways that we can prepare a person ahead of time by connecting them with other organizations that help with financial planning, that can help them kind of like get through the process of being prepared to make such a purchase. And then diversifying one's land use. I've learned a lot about the many ways that having land, you can do so much with it. And it's a matter of actually knowing who are the right people to go to ask those questions, like what can I do with this? What are the opportunities I have associated with this property? What are the things that I'm restricted by, be it like zoning things or stream availability if you're doing things that require a lot more like water access. And so those are some other elements of land use management that we wanted to be able to highlight. And all these different pieces required actually partnerships. We learned a lot about partnerships in this morning's session. That TLC, we were really good at doing land conservation easements, but I'm not gonna teach anybody how to go farming. I know I can take care of a house plant and that's about it. But there are so many other farm service organizations out there that can teach you that, or financial health organizations that can teach you about managing your personal finances that prepares you for actually making such a purchase. And then the last piece was about estate planning, land transition planning. So having more of a long-term perspective of how you're actually using land. One of the challenges associated with properties in our area, as well as a lot of like Eastern North Carolina, I'm thinking about, especially since we heard so many speakers from that region, is that there are unfortunately a lot of properties that are lost to air property being sold via like partition sales, for example, that prevents actually land staying all together, but also like family feuds and different ways that people have lost land over time, or have been, or there's been predatory land things as well. So yeah, thinking long term about like, okay, the entity that I'm purchasing this land, what is the best way to have it protected for long term so that my heirs will be able to know exactly what they can do, keeping this land all together so that it's not divided and sold to further mass development. So all these elements coming together, education opportunities actually that could be beneficial for people to know about prior to even owning land. And so that's what this program began as, and actually this upcoming year we're actually hoping to be able to expand into in-person workshops taking place throughout the year in different counties that we're working in our 6-county region. And also, again, like expanding the amount of organizations and partners that we're reaching out to connect people with who are actually interested in like certain buying land. So that's on the whole what Good Ground Initiative is, and focusing on using all those resources, putting those things together. And I think it like kind of melds really nicely actually with our other speakers here today for people. Not everybody is ready to purchase land and like own it. There's a lot that goes into that, but not everybody is ready to, do a lease on how much you can do it. Wait a second. Up to like,
What do you mean? Like up to the cost?
how many acres do they have?
Up to 30, but mostly like 5. It
Yeah.
depends on what they're doing.
So like not everyone's ready to manage that.
I mean,
Maybe
5
it's
is too much,
smaller.
honestly, for most people.
Exactly.
Get to.
And so you need those different stages to be able to meet people where they are so that they can continue to kind of expand and build up until they're ready actually to get to the point of ownership and so on. So that's good ground.
All right, well, we have a series of set questions that's going to get at how they recruit farmers, the tools they use to keep farmers, as well as funding. But I thought we'd just take a pause real quickly and open it up to the audience for any general questions or clarification on each of the case studies.
One quick one, if you Good Ground Initiative, that's an awesome program. Do they transfer the parcels that are purchased? How many of those are in the present use valuation? Tax break on it. And do they transfer that to the owner, and therefore it's a bona fide farm, except for zoning type of thing? Is that typical?
It's a complicated one. That area of how Good Ground is always expanding. So when TLC becomes the owners of property, when we take on that ownership, we are not able to actually hold present use value on those properties. So if it's in private ownership prior to, and we become the ones who own it, then we are not able to have present use value on it. So when we transfer it, then a person can become re-enrolled. But unfortunately, no. So why I said the ground is expanding, and so to speak, is an area that we have not focused on quite yet, but do see the benefits of, is potentially kind of being a link, so to speak, between a seller and a buyer, so that for one, it stays in private ownership, and therefore they can preserve that present use value. But we haven't done it yet, so maybe in the future. Oh yeah. So present use, actually, Leanne, you can probably explain it better than I can. I know it, but I think you know it better.
It's important for farmers.
Well, a lot of people say present use value is the greatest conservation tool, at least in the state of North Carolina. What it is your property tax value. So it is actually a state set rate, but every county has a program, and I believe most counties across the country have present use programs. And what they do is they set a value for farm use, horticulture use, and forestry use that is much lower than what you would pay if it was traditionally residential or commercial property. So, for example, we worked on a farm that was worth about $1 million, and that's what it was appraised as tax value-wise. That person in Wake County would pay about $5,000 in taxes. Since it was a farm under forestry, they paid about $200 annually in taxes. So it is a program that is run through your county tax department and is a key tool. But there are requirements. For horticulture, you have to be at least 5 acres. For agriculture, you have to have at least 10 acres. And for forestry, you have to have at least 20 acres.
Just one follow-up on that. Do you ever, if you buy land that's like 200 acres, you ever subdivide it and become sort of farm developers? So if somebody wants 5 acres, someone wants 20.
Think about it.
We've explored that. Kierra, you did a lot of research, right? And kind of the ideal size for these small farms was about 20 acres, is that right?
Yeah, roughly 10 to 20 acres, depending on what a person's interested in. If it's more pasture land, they're gonna need a little bit more. But for the folks who are interested in good ground in particular, it runs between 10 to 20. We have not yet done such a subdivision like that. We're receiving something like 200 acres and then kind of subdividing it out. On the whole, we tend to like to keep things together. Yeah, that's a general how we like to do things. But I see, yeah, with good ground, there's many ways in which we're continuing, having to adjust and be flexible to the needs that we're seeing around us. But I'll just say 10 to 20 is the sweet spot.
Yeah, I have a question about Williamson. Basically, I was thinking like part of the reason that land scarcity is a thing is because like people, once they have land, they tend to stay on it. So like with that finite amount of land, like how do you envision that continuing to be like a resource for more and more people?
Yeah, that's a great question. One that I've thought about, but realistically won't be a problem for us for a long time. We have about 120 acres of farmland. A lot of that's been fallow for a few decades, so some of that's still just in like rehab right now. And it's probably on about 65 of that is just active farming. And that is mostly 2 farms. The rest of that is 1 30-acre parcel and 1 20-acre parcel that has cattle. The rest of it is like extremely small. I think maybe math-wise, maybe I'm wrong, maybe more closer to 70. But a thing that, you know, maybe we'll get to later is that I do have a decent problem with redundancy. I mean, I think just generally speaking, anyone that deals with newer beginning farmers, any incubator programs, in the garden program, there is a big, I mean, there's a big dropout rate. It's just par for the course. It's a benefit of the program because we don't have any, like, they can basically leave within 30 days if they want. But I have a problem finding farmers, frankly. In my neck of the woods over in East Wake County, I don't think if you picked Williamson up and put it smack dab in the middle of Chapel Hill and Durham, I think that would be a problem. I think that I would have to have kind of a rate, but as I look at it, at least as it stands now, this is a land access, not like an educational program. And so as long as the farmers are feeding the local food system, I don't have a problem with them sitting there for as long as they want, as long as they're farming. That's as it stands now. If it becomes a thing, there are other examples that I've seen There's one up in Vermont that I've seen a few, maybe in Rhode Island that I visited as well, that have these programs where if you stick around for a long time, you become a mentor to newer beginning farmers, and so it's like there's an educational and like a little bit more of a buy-in component to it. It's just like not, I wish I had that problem. I wish I had that at current state. Maybe in 10 years, as this program gets a little bigger, it'll be more of a thing. But as I see it, the land's not gonna get any cheaper in Wake County, and why make it harder for farmers to have to go transition? Obviously the goal is ownership, and a lot of farms do wanna own because they can leverage that on, getting a tractor. And so that is, we've had talks, especially with the Korean Community Farm, about the Good Ground program and feeding them into that and being like a feeder source into Good Ground. But as it stands, it's not really an issue yet.
Well, maybe we can transition there into our first question, which kind of dovetails on that, which is how do each of you recruit either land seekers or farmers or gardeners to your program?
So initially, this was an initiative that came out of strategic plan, but was community driven. So both groups were fighting for years to have the garden spaces. Those folks are still around for the most part, but it's very insular in the sense that it's just those folks. So what I've been doing is trying to work with those groups to do community events. We've been working with Interfaith, who's been great, to host workshops and try to get more folks involved and just get the word out there that these are open and public spaces, that whoever wants to come into these spaces is welcome. So it's mostly a word of mouth sort of thing right now. There's not a lot of other ways that we have been communicating. We just got the website up not that long ago. So that's how we've been recruiting right now is word of mouth, the website, and then just events.
Yeah, I recruit by doing this. I recruit a lot by being in the community as much as possible, and like any event in East Wake County, Southeast Wake County, I guess, I'm trying to go to. If we get invited to something, I'm trying to talk to the locals. I go to a lot of soil and water events. I go to other farming organization events around here, and I tell people in those organizations about the program to just, so like if they have feeders and they have people that they know, because it is a specific kind of farmer we're looking for, generally small scale, which doesn't necessarily equate to the kind of farming they do in East Wake County. Definitely like more regenerative aspects of things, which is more attuned to what they're doing over in the Chapel Hill and Durham areas. But that's too far of a commute, so a lot of the interest I get are from farmers or potential farmers in in Durham and Orange County. But I myself make that commute, and I am a farmer, and I know that it would not be good if I had a day job and still had to do that on the weekends and the evenings. We put an RFP out every year, so we leverage a lot of our just like people who follow TLC, but unfortunately those are not necessarily small scale new farmers. And so we're just trying to put it out there as much as possible. I'm still looking for ideas as to how to get it out there more if anyone has any ideas. I'm always asking, so.
Yeah, I'd say similarly, presentations and conferences like this are a way that I've connected with people, as well as those place workshops, hoping to actually connect with more communities next year as the presenters. We're hoping to, so we have a committee of individuals that are helping us to steer the program, and some of them actually are farmers themselves, and there's a couple of them that are all like Black farmers in Chatham County or Durham County. They know directly like the connections to the communities around them, and so we're hoping to do presentations that okay, we're gonna do this on your farm, invite your friends so they can come to it and know about what's going on so that we can have those direct connections. Because there's a project that we're able to actually meet some folks in the area, all because we held it at Williamson, and the property is itself like down the street from Williamson. And so through that particular presentation, I got to meet some folks who are from the area, generational farmers as well. So we're gonna do a project with them pretty soon.
Particularly around recruitment, it is not, if you build it, they will come situation with farmers and especially underserved communities that work in agriculture. We all work with those communities, and they're inherently distrustful of these organizations that are often white-led, coming to them and being like, look what we have, do you guys want to be a part of it? And they say, why would we want to be part of it? We don't know what y'all are up to. And so it is like years long relationship building to get these programs out to even where they're at now, which are still, I think we would all admit, in the early stages of like the potential that it can have. And so that's a really important aspect, is that like it takes years to even get beginning parts of things going.
Yeah, I'd be interested. One of key connection for us, at least in Williamson, was one of the local churches this morning, and we've had folks from that church on advisory boards for over 20 years before we even owned some of these properties. So that's been really helpful in connecting us with the local community. But I'd just be curious with the audience if there's been any great connections or strategies you've used, especially in rural areas, to really recruit farmers or folks operating in this area.
Reverend Joyner, not only do we take the kids out there, but he actually goes to churches. There ain't nobody who don't know his name. And now his is not exactly in this way, but what Reverend Joyner does is he goes to churches and hosts class about building raised beds in their backyards and growing their own food to eat in their backyard. And from that, he has developed more and more interest, as he said this morning, the people coming out to the farm, especially retirees. So, starting not with come take our land, but starting with, because a lot of people like me who did farm for years, that what drives you out is the dead plants. Your first year you're growing stuff, oh, this looks so cute. My daughter was doing this year. And oh, look, oh, weeds, oh, it's dead.
Yeah.
You know, so if you can get them to start learning they can do it on a smaller scale, then that can recruit them for the bigger scale. But that's one of the questions I actually had is Edgecombe County is a food desert, and we are severely racked with the problem for not having fresh produce, fruits, and all that kind of stuff. And what he's doing is great, but do y'all have connections to other places, or y'all like the disease is going to spread if it's not to us? I mean, what's the future like in places like my county that we have, to my knowledge, and I've been involved in a lot of stuff in the county, especially with the school system, we have nothing like this. And every day I drive to a school in my county and see another piece of farmland with stick-built cookie cutter messes going on them that they're driving right here in Raleigh to go to work, you know, and not even working in our county. And we're seeing that farmland every year, more of it going. So how does something like this start outside of this area? How would that happen?
Well, and Leigh and Kierra and Amy might have some ideas, but I come from farming, not environmental conservation life before I got this job, and every county, with the exception of one, Wilson County, in North Carolina, all 99 of the 100 counties has a land trust. There are various stages, there are various ways that land trusts work. A lot of them are understaffed, but at least when it comes to what we do, I would say pitch them the idea of good ground. I mean, my program might be a little bit more than they can chew off without a lot of staffing, but like just come to the program and you never know who's gonna be able to take it up. You know, is it gonna be a church? Is it gonna be a food hub as we see kind of with interfaith? Is it gonna be a land trust? I mean, I would have never thought of a land trust dipping their toes into farming before I started at TLC. And so, yeah, just like pitch it to people, and somebody's gonna wanna bite.
Yeah.
There's 26 land trusts in the state of North Carolina, so there is a land trust that serves your area. I believe us and a few of the mountain land trusts are the only ones that have really dived into this buy, protect, sell kind of area. But it's always worth a conversation. And, you know, as with Amy, you know, sometimes your local churches or your parks department can be a great place to start. And I think you started with one community garden, right? But now, do you want to share a little more?
And I think it was, Heather mentioned too some of the historical background, which is really great to preface in that way. Because at least for the city of Raleigh, it was the community that drove getting the gardens there, but there was no one to kind of spearhead that initially. So that was kind of the cart before the horse. So the spaces were built with the help of Interfaith, and I also see Extension there too. So we had some Extension help as well. And then I came along the following year as a part-time person. So I'm half of a person for this initiative that needs to grow. But yeah, so I think just to kind of get back to what you're saying about the reaching out to parks, and I know Edgecombe County is a lot different than Raleigh in a lot of ways. And just so I'm right, is Reverend Joyner, that's Cone Tone Ministries, right? Kanita. Oh, okay.
It's
Sorry
spelled
about that.
Cone Tone,
That's how I
but it's-
pronounced
it's
it. I got that all types of
Yes.
messed up, but thank you. I appreciate that. What is it, Kanita?
Yes, it's
Okay.
Kanita.
Kanita. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I've met him a couple times. He's an angel. But for something like that, I think because we have, and I meant to mention this earlier, Raleigh, I think, it's really unique in a lot of ways. Is how large Parks and Recs is, how well funded it is. I've worked in nonprofits for the majority of my career. We did not have garden budgets. It was not something that we even had, and our budget is very small comparatively. But the fact that we have a budget, the fact that we have a part-time person, they've been fighting to try to get a full-time person in this position, is kind of a big deal. Even though it's a larger city and it is, the needs here, especially in food insecurity, are huge. The fact that the city is supporting that and is behind that, to me, is really a good thing. Which may be a little bit more to chew off for a smaller county, but if there are champions in the community, people listen to those folks, especially like someone like Reverend Joyner. If that person's in your back pocket, people will listen, and that drives the machine.
Maybe we can move on to funding.
Yeah.
And I think Amy, I know I mentioned that City of Raleigh, I think, has an $80 million parks budget. That's annual. That's a lot of money. But could you share how much of that is dedicated to maintenance and management of the gardens?
So yeah, we have nothing compared to that. But Parks and Recs, as I mentioned, it's a behemoth. It is huge. That's every community center, every park, every preserve that needs management, mowed, grass is mowed, all of the things. Ice, we don't really have a lot. But that also is tree work, transportation. So this, I'm sure you can find a printout. I don't have it. What all that goes to. My budget's very small. And then we're within the Department of Health and Wellness, so that's supposed to serve also nutritional needs for the seniors, active adults, youth nutrition. So we do all the summer programs, the summer feeding programs. All of that's housed under Health and Wellness and is funneled through two full-time people. So it's quite a big ask. And I'm not sure what Ainsley's total budget is, but yeah.
But in general, you said about 4,000.
Yeah, I've got about 4,000 per garden, give or take.
So it's a very small percentage of the overall parks budget. And I just bring that up because even though folks may say, well, Raleigh's got $80 million, there's no way we can do this. In likelihood, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 from your local parks department, even for our smaller counties and areas, is doable to help.
You can fundraise $4,000.
Yeah. That's,
Really?
So maybe Heather, do you want to talk a little bit about how Williamson is funded?
Right, so I mentioned when I was speaking earlier, Williamson was originally, and I don't think it would have become the program it was if it wasn't originally partially funded by Wake County. And so we were written in by a not Raleigh, but Wake County commissioners. We were lucky to have Sig, who was a champion of the program, that took it upon himself to put it in his part of his budget. And it was about $40,000 a year that would come out of his portion of the budget for Wake County. And that went on for 6 years, and it was supported by others. And then SIG left, and they supported it for another 3 years just because it was already written in. And then 2024 happened. Things became a lot tighter. We tried to get it written in through our Wake County Soil and Water. They were trying to put it into their budget. because we work very closely with our soil and water, so that's also another organization to leverage in your county if you have it. Ours, again, Wake County is really big and really good. Not everybody's county is so lucky, but that's just another portion because they're out there in the fields with farmers to talk to, so they know a lot. We tried to put it in through their budget and it didn't work out, but we'll keep trying every year again. But currently now it is just funded by TLC and some just random grants that we get sometimes, which have also tightened over the years as well. But yeah, currently it is just TLC. But you know, operating budget is probably way less than $40,000. That also went towards my salary. I haven't done the math on how much I actually spent, but it's less than 20, and that's mostly fixing tractors, like far and away, mostly just fixing our tractors.
Yeah, so Big Ground, my position is funded by Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation. Very thankful for them. But there's other areas of the program that are funded using either state or local funds. So there's an aspect of our work that's focused on site development for properties, so paying for surveys, books, paying for permitting and other things associated with like land management responsibilities. So that's funded through the North Carolina Department of North Carolina Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Trust Fund. Yeah, long one, ADFP for short. They help to fund some of those site development related expenses. Others include a lot of work with individual like donations from people that we meet as an organization. We were, before things changed, we did have a fund or a contract with the USDA Regional Conservation Partnership Program, or RCPP for short, but that one was rescinded earlier this year for reasons everyone's aware of. And that one was to help support the purchase of conservation easements. And I asked you what a conservation easement is, I didn't tell you what it was. So, sorry about that. So it's an agreement between a land trust and a landowner in which that owner restricts certain rights associated with that property. So development and subdivision are those main things that are restricted, and that person can either donate or sell it to those rights to the land trust. And in doing so, the property is permanently restricted in terms of its use. The landowner continues to own it, to have the management responsibilities, but it's tied directly to the property for all subsequent owners. They can sell it, they can pass it on to their heirs, they can donate it, leave it in their will, but that conservation easement is still tied to the property no matter who owns it in the future.
Yeah, and I'll just mention one other funding source, because my hope is that every county in America eventually adopts this funding source, and that is the present use valuation we talked about earlier, that deferred tax value. In addition to that, an incentive to keep folks in that program, if they sell for development, they have to pay 3 years of back taxes. So that $5,000 tax bill that was then $200, that means if they sold that farm, they'd have to pay $15,000 in taxes if they come out of farming. Well, in Wake County, our Soil and Water District and TLC and others advocated to our county commissioners that when a property comes out of present use value, that money should be dedicated, that $15,000, to farmland preservation. And so, you know, a lot of our smaller counties or more rural counties, this is not going to be a big number, but, you know, everywhere is developing, so it can grow. And in Wake County alone last year, that was $4 million that was collected out of those rollback taxes and is now available for farmland preservation, and it's how we have funded at least, or will fund the first 2 Good Ground projects, Buy, Protect, Sell in Wake County. So, other questions on funding or anything else related to the programs?
Speaking of funding, TLC's funding, what's the y'all's trajectory change with everything that's going on in the world currently, or?
Yeah.
Maybe a sense of question.
You know, thankfully locally, we have really worked to develop some of these innovative local funding sources through our county governments. We also have a program that works with our public utilities, our water utilities, that funds farmland and open space preservation. So in general, TLC, most of our land protection work is funded through public, state, local, and a little bit of federal funding resources. With everything going on, federal funding has been hurt the most, and that mainly is our larger, more conventional farms that use the ALE, the Agricultural Lands Easement Program, as well as the RCPP program that Kierra mentioned. Most of our operating, our salaries are funded by donations and memberships to TLC, but our land acquisition is primarily funded by local county funds and then also state funds. And so far, they have not been, impacted as much as the federal funds.
First of all, thanks to all four of y'all, all three of y'all. This has been really interesting, and I appreciate how y'all taking us through this sort of farm journey. I think one thing that's also apparent in hearing us speak is that you've had counties behind you that are very supportive of this work. We have been dealing with a county that is like very much non-supportive of some of this, and I was trying to figure out the best way to ask this question, but at least in one of the initiatives that we were working on, it finally became clear that it was like without because of the ability to sort of wield zoning and sort of bureaucratic process as a delaying tool, like it wasn't going to work if the county wasn't going to be supportive, regardless of what the community engagement process and regardless of the landowner's process was. And I guess I kind of wanted to ask that as a question and be like, do you think these projects can work without a government that is supporting them, or is that really a necessary part of the ecosystem to make this sort of mixed use or farming thing stand up over time?
Well, I mean, I think it can always work out without the government, but unfortunately a lot of the money, I mean, if it's your local government that's also not working out, and we already are getting, really aggressive sorts of not working in terms of the federal government. Where are you from?
Richmond.
Oh, Richmond. Oh, dang. It could on a different scale, but everybody's purse strings are tight right now, so everybody's really stressed out, right? But this could also work. I mean, look at Interfaith. Interfaith has this massive farm that's producing, I think I heard yesterday, 50,000 pounds of food a year. So there are other ways that you can do it, and leveraging like other farming organizations possibly, I think could help. I think if there's a land grant school around or any sort of university, that could also help. I know Duke's not a land grant, they don't even have an ag program, but they have a farm on their campus. Chapel Hill also doesn't have an ag program, they're not a land grant university. They have a gardening program on their campus, and so, and a lot of these universities own lots of land. So I think that's an easy way to go, but that's also its own bureaucratic mess, so I don't know.
Yeah, and I'll give the story of 10 years ago, the Wake County government almost completely cut our entire soil and water district. And was going to have it be all volunteer. And I don't know about your areas, but Soil and Water is a very powerful organization backed by Farm Bureau in North Carolina. And it's also an elected position. You have soil and water supervisors. So the fact that Wake County might cut this program that has been around for 60 years showed the attitude to farming in our county at that time. I think some things like the American Farmland Trust survey that was mentioned, which highlighted Wake County being 32nd and Johnson County being 19th in the country for farmland loss. tools like those can be really helpful for conveying to your local governments, you know, what is at risk. I mean, we didn't want to be Charlotte, Mecklenburg County with 0 farmland left. And also the importance of value of agriculture in your county. I mean, still being Wake County, I think farming is still like the 8th industry in our county, which is amazing given that we're, you know, over 1 million people. So really doing those tools in our very more rural counties, very conservative in many ways, especially fiscally. Having our farmers that were the real producers advocate for these programs, call commissioners up and say, hey, look, this is an issue that crosses the aisle, you know, all areas support this, and I really want to see farms protected in our county, has been the best strategy for us.
And also, like Leanne had mentioned it, but she also was a part of an original organization that helped, that was a private group of people that got mad when they thought about it and they heard about it, and then they formed a group that is still active in different ways now to advocate for funding, to advocate to the county commissioners, to raise money. And so it's like leverage those groups of like retired ladies that want to get angry, and they're angry. They're all angry. My mom is one of those, not Leanne. My mom is one of those. They're angry and they're looking for something to do, and they're all very good at organizing and bugging people. I think that's always a great resource. And yeah, just phone calls. I find phone calls to local government on a mass scale to work very well.
So I kind of, a little unorthodox, but so I'm a local and a big fan of Williamson Preserve as a mountain biker, but I didn't know it had all that farming attached to it. So, and maybe you guys do this, but we have like the same goals, right, of preserving property, preserving areas, because we also keep losing trails in the area. But like, I've never seen any like collaboration together, right? So like maybe it's a little unorthodox, but like there are other communities that can work together to like help kind of engage more, and like, because even trail runners, mountain bikers, etc., right? A lot of them really want healthy food, all that stuff. So like maybe at like a trail race or something, some of those local farmers could set up or do some, you know, like there's all these other kind of maybe out of the box thinking things too, or a lot of races too. A lot of them sign up and you can donate to organizations, so maybe then a little bit of that race money could go to TLC or something else. So something to think about.
That is a phenomenal idea, and I'm gonna text my partner over at Williamson right after this and mention it to him. So we work with TWERK, we work with other organizations that deal with invasive species removal, and frankly, what actually happens is the trail system's kind of not near the farming system for the most part, which is great for the farmers, they don't get bugged, but also you don't see it, and so that's actually a phenomenal idea. It's just kind of, normally the mountain bikers want to get out there and fix the trails and make secret jumps that we don't know about, but
but they also are respectful too, so if it's like, stay out of here. I can't account for all of them, but there are some that are like, I won't own those ones. But we also want to protect land and keep land, right? So it's like, if we can work together and do this, that's more force for you guys to also take to the government to be like, keep our land. Because as you know, we lost Crabtree. So it's like, in that, despite trying to organize everybody together, it didn't work. So,
yeah, that's a great idea. I'm gonna email several people after this to talk about that.
I stole that idea.
I think we've got about 3 minutes left, so any burning questions?
I was just curious for the Good Ground Initiative, when you have farmers who are interested in purchasing, do you all provide financing? Do you connect them to financing?
Yeah, we not provide financing, but it is a connection to financing. In terms of, well, okay, actually, I'll take that back. So they themselves get connected to loan officers in order to make the purchase. But we do have like a list of recommendations for potential grants to take advantage of, or organizations that are a little bit more creative in their lending, especially since they have more of a farming focused aspect of their lending programs. But no, we ourselves not for financing. We try to help out in other ways in terms of the financing, so paying for survey costs. Basically what we're trying to do is get it such that all they're paying for is like the purchase of the land itself as much as possible.
thank y'all. Williamson Farm is actually only 15 minutes east of here. We have a table out front if anyone wants a side venture while they're in the area. We welcome you to come visit.
I'll show you there tomorrow afternoon. It ends at noon here. If everyone wants to come, just holler at me.
Heather's giving private tours.
Yeah, I'm giving private tours, baby. Let's go.
But thank y'all for coming.